Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's Officers Association webinar uh, on the perils of setting up in business. And I'm delighted to welcome our guest speaker tonight, is Simon Watson. So, Simon, welcome to tonight's webinar. Thank you very much for coming in. Can I ask you just to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've had a very eclectic career. I basically left university, having joined the OTC, as many of us did. Did a year's service with the Royal Regiment of Wales, and then left to go and become, and the sort of second phase of my leaving, went to become a money broker in the city. I then moved on to working in the film business. When I left the city, having made all my millions and spent them all on things like cocaine, drugs, and rock and roll, and then well, yes, as I certainly did, and then I then moved into location management in the film business, which was herding cats and organising lots of lovies do their thing, and then I ended up moving into the TA reserve, as in full-time FTRS role, which I did down at Land, as it was in those days, down at Wilton. I did a couple of years there on UK ops, so doing all the floods, fires, and striking and all the rest. Before then, moving into the RAF reserve, and a sideways move, primarily because I became ill with a blood disorder and therefore couldn't be deployed, and so I moved into the RAF reserve, as one does, and worked very close to home. Did that in all for 7 years, and then I duly left. Leaving was difficult. I was over the age of nearly 50, and I say nearly 50. I was the wrong side of 40, put it that way. And that does, whatever anyone says about the fact that people want experienced managers, that will put you down on the peggings, because you don't have the necessary experience to go straight into firms, which is what I want to do, and run things and organise and do stuff. So it was quite a depressing time, living in the military, not finding anything I could move into, and I ended up working sort of bit part here and there as a management consultant. I did all the typical ones that people do, working for Nightworks. I then moved off into IT companies. I hadn't a clue about IT, but I learned quite quickly that you can't talk to coders and anyone else who's really a computer buff, because they're impossible to discuss with. I then moved into interim management, which was much better. Interim management, they want people like us to basically go in, sort everything out, work 90 hours a day, and basically get a grip on things that have probably fallen over because a key member of staff, bearing in mind these companies are paper thin with their resilience, key member of staff has fallen over, and then they call you in. It is a very interesting world. You get called in to do all sorts of things. You need to know about accountancy, you need to know about IT, you need to know about people, and this is actually not true. What you need to know about is only the people bit. Once you've got the working with the people bit right, actually interim management is fairly easy. Yes, it's frenetic. Yes, it's very long, has very long hours, but actually it's okay. From this, then I went to work in a company because the owner had serious cancer, and he said, "Okay, look, this is my cleaning company. It needs to be run, and get on with it." So I walked in. Julie saw his wife there, who said, "Hi, this is the business. I don't actually know anything about it, and I've got an appointment at the hairdresser's, so I've got to go." And off Mary went. And so I was then thrown in the deep end and had to find out exactly what it was all about. And it was indeed all about people. And these, what I call lower class jobs, and that's putting the word on it, you've got highly unskilled people, i.e. they're labourers, doing jobs like this, actually typical for military and really easy for us to run. It's managing people, and actually the money side of it, although complicated, is fairly simple. So I then realised, once I'd done that piece and the company was duly sold, because I ramped it up for it to be sold, which it successfully was, I then walked out and went, right, I'm going to set up my own, because actually you can make a lot of money doing cleaning. Yes, it's instant, but it's a good vehicle to actually make money and work for yourself, build up something that you can then sell on in due course. So the first thing I looked around for was companies to buy. Rather than setting up myself and looking for teams, I thought the way to do this is actually buy a company. And this is the way I would suggest doing it. So if you went into the building trade, if you went into any others, I would suggest that's what you do. So I set up my own cleaning company, which is ET Cleaning Services. And the idea of that was to buy other companies. And the reason I got into that was actually because when you go to look at small companies to buy, you will find they look lovely on paper, but actually within them, there's cash flying about here, there, and everywhere, which covers up all sorts of ills. And you want a clean company if you want to set it up and you want to run it, because the last thing you want to do is when you actually sell the company is get caught out either by the tax man or get caught out by the owner coming back and throwing it back at you and saying, no, you didn't tell me what you said. The tin definitely said good company and you've sold me a shady deal.
Is that also true about debts that the company has and they don't disclose them?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's really difficult. When you go and look at a company, your accountant will do due diligence. He will look at the accounts, and the accounts are wonderful things, but they only show the business that has been conducted via the bank. So if it's gone through the bank, then, yeah, you've got ins into the bank and you've got outs. And that's very simple. You see the VAT gets paid, you see the staff get paid, you see the car bills get paid, you see the insurance gets paid, the insurance on the insurance gets paid, you see all these kind of things, the pensions get paid, etc. And you find a whole load of costs there which are going out of the company. And the coming in is this lovely thing called money, which then leads to this thing called profit. It's fine. It looks great to a certain point. When you actually realize that the company has no paper records of anything, they have nothing because they're hopelessly set up. They're set up by someone with an idea who basically isn't a paperwork person. So they set the stuff up. They don't have proper accounts to actually keep themselves. You haven't a clue what you're buying. And the worst thing is, a lot of these companies, they have loads of cash payments. And cash can be used to switch across and make a company look very profitable. And so therefore, you've really got to ask the questions, who gets paid what, which client has been paying in cash, what's actually going on here. If you don't get that information, walk away, because as it says on the PowerPoint, once you look inside the brown paper bag, you can find that all it's there for is so that you can help you breathe more slowly. So a whole load of worms and maggots do come out. And the biggest thing, I suppose, about the actual company agents like Dalton's, if you look on the Dalton's website, always selling something, they have absolutely zero idea about what a company is. They expect you to do everything for it, everything to look into that company, and everything you need to do yourself. Not for you do they do a single thing. So you generally end up with looking at companies and saying, well, that one might be a good idea. That one's got a great idea, and look, the profits look okay, and therefore I'll take that one on board. Ideally, the best thing, and this is something I definitely learned, is go and work for the company beforehand if you can. Even if you go and walk in there for a week and just do unpaid work, that would be one of the practical things to do, so that you end up not buying a bag of worms, which I certainly did with one of my companies.
So what are the challenges you would be facing in starting your own business, Simon?
So the thing is, of course, we're very unknowledgeable. Well, that's a nice word, isn't it? We're not very knowledgeable on what the accountants are going to bring to the pile. We're not very knowledgeable about rules such as IR35, as in whether someone is self-employed or whether they're going to work for you. We're not very knowledgeable about how much things actually cost, and that includes staff, all the add-on costs that get chucked into your business once you start running it and you start realizing what they are. You don't realize as well that actually things have to be paid there and then. If you don't pay your VAT, big fine, probably. If you don't pay your tax, big fine, probably. The taxman then comes to investigate you. That's the last thing you need, because that takes up all your time. And also, if you have bought a bag of worms, they're going to find that out, and then that's hell to pay. So in terms of what we don't know, there is everything we don't know. But what we do know is that key thing, and how to deal with people, how to deal with customers. If you're good at dealing, from being a platoon commander and you can talk to the lads and get them to do what you want, that's great. That gets the staff to do what you want. And then when you look upwards and you talk to the staff, brigade staff, whatever, and you can get them to listen to you, you can actually deal with the customer. There are, of course, people who are impossible to deal with, and you just have to get rid of them because they're hopeless. And that works either downwards or upwards. Certainly choosing the right staff is difficult. We naturally will go for people who are like ourselves. We're hardworking, we're generally challenge driven. Trying to find those people who will work at the lower rates is difficult. All my employees now are pretty much to a man foreign. All the Brit ones have gone, and that's because they just literally can't keep the pace. So generally going in and not knowing about anything other than the people, it's okay, but you've then got to find out what you don't know, and then go and very, very quickly find out from accountants, firms, etc., what you do need to know. Dealing with banks is impossible. The computer has taken over, and when you try to change a bank account or get your details changed on a bank account, that will also take you months and months. It's taken me with NatWest 3.5 months. With HSBC, it's still ongoing, but they still haven't changed all the details to my address, my name, my online banking, etc. They are a nightmare. My best advice there: set up a new bank account and get your clients to change over to it as soon as possible. I think looking at other challenges, every business, generally from the ones I've seen, has what we call the bread and butter aspect to it, i.e. the thing that keeps the staff and keeps some basic costs going. And then you have the champagne and caviar. And that, in terms of my business, that's the commercial. The commercial business is definitely the caviar. The domestic business is a pain in the backside, but it does provide bread and butter work. It also provides the cleaners with something to do, because you want the cleaners to work professionally, i.e. you want them to work day and night, and therefore you need your cleaners to be working during the day and then want to work at night, rather than calling in people who just work at night time, because that makes your pool of people you can employ a lot smaller. What do I really need to talk about in terms of...
Can I ask you a question on that slide? Self-employedly employed staff, IR35. Quite a number of people think of when they leave the services and setting themselves up on their own. What's the difference then between setting yourself up on your own or setting up your own business?
Okay, so if you set yourself up as, I don't know, blogs, trading, and that could be as an interim manager or anything where you're doing a service-based thing, you will set yourself up under Class 2, probably, national insurance contributions. And that means that at the end of the day, you'll pay national insurance at about £70 a year, so it's just over £1.50 or thereabouts per week that you have to pay. You can still do that. It's due to be changed, but I'm not quite sure when. And you can set yourself up as that, and that's the only tax you'll pay until you start to obviously pay yourself salary, etc. But you wouldn't do that. You pay yourself dividends, but of course, and dividends are going to be hacked, so you're only £2,000 allowed to be paid tax-free before you start having to pay tax. But anyway, the point about being self-employed in that truly, this is me and I'm doing the job, you pay very little in tax. The problem is with all of that is that you then start to realize, as with all these things, that you've got no overheads. You drive your car, yeah, but you drove your car anyway. And you have a phone, yeah, but you had a phone anyway. You have a laptop, and you have a laptop anyway. And you might have a few extra costs, I don't know, driving to Leicestershire to go and meet someone to go and bid for some work, or that you then do that work. But it's always you getting paid. When you're actually a director of a company, and the company I'm talking about, not a trading as self-employed chap, you realize that the costs and all the complications start getting very serious. If you employ staff, you're going to end up with a lot of liabilities in terms of pension payments. You have to pay their national insurance. They have to pay their national insurance, but you've got to make sure in the payroll it's actually paid. And you start to add cost. And cost is everywhere. Insurance, to get my public liability insurance and my employer's liability to stop the idiots falling off ladders that they're not allowed to use, that starts to cost money. And my insurance generally comes to about £5,000 a year. Now, if you're self-employed, that cost would be something like 200, and you're working for night work, say, and your work you do there, you have got minimal cost. My costs are just ramped up by factors of 10, 15, etc. And when you employ staff, if they want to be self-employed, they can't necessarily be self-employed under the IR35, right, Inland Revenue 35 rules, which mean that if you can be considered as an employee, you must be an employee, which means they cannot be self-employed and gain all the benefits of hardly paying any tax. And you've got to pay all these additional costs for them, the pension, their national insurance, the company national insurance has to be paid. And so you end up with cost on cost, and that's just on the labour. When you're actually running a company, the costs are phenomenal. They're very, very wide, and everything costs money. And what you must do with all of that is work out, okay, this is what I want to pay myself. This is what the costs are, and this is therefore my price. And that becomes very difficult to see. And it took me the best part of 3 months before I realized I was underpriced by approximately 17%, and I was going under. So had it not been for a thank of Dad giving me £5,000, I would have most certainly not been able to pay part of a VAT bill. And as a result of that, I would have been winding up the company. It's very, very easy to walk in and think this is all going to be okay. And look, we've got the staff cost me £8.50. I'm charging out at £12.50, so therefore £4 profit must be okay. It really is not. It doesn't work at all. So you start to look at all of that when you start to look at this self-employed business and employed business. Self-employed being someone who wanders around doing, running your own company as you are, but you're not really. You're trading as, or even if you set yourself up as a limited company, your expenses are nil. When you run a company of people, your expenses are very huge. And what you also have, and this is one of the really important things, if you don't set yourself up as VAT vatable company to start with, you are really conning yourself, because your company will grow and you will then have to convert your cash clients into VAT paying clients. And that's not healthy either, because of course your cash paying clients don't want to pay an extra 20% on their bills. So you've really got to start to think right at the beginning what your cost base is going to be, and you need to start thinking, right, that is what I'm going to be VAT-able in the next few years, so I might as well do it right now, because £85,000 is nothing. It really is nothing. And I think to do with other challenges, you have to realise that most people out in the civilian world love to be told what to do, and really do need to be told what to do, and you do need to spend a lot of time explaining to them. And the buck stops with you, and that means the chain of command means you to them, and there is no, you won't have sub-directors and associate directors and managers and this kind of thing. It's likely that you're going to go straight from you straight into the actual workers who deliver the output. So therefore, everything rests on you, and you'll be overflooded with communication, and you need to work out a way of actually not letting that make you fall over, because it's pretty tough when everyone's trying to get hold of you, especially when the tax man wants, or the VAT man wants to come and visit you. That's really quite serious as well. And that leads to really the last slide, daily firefighting. You're trying to grow the business because you need to be able to grow the business, because these businesses usually are being sold, and I'll go on to that a bit later, but they're usually being sold for a reason. And so you need to firefight and sort out the problems of the business and sort out your daily business whilst trying to grow the business and put it into good order.
So if for somebody listening in, Simon, who's considering setting up a business or buying a business as you did, what do you think that person would need to put in place before he could do this?
So first of all, obviously, if you're looking to buy a business, you do need to go and talk to a solicitor/lawyer, and recognise that some solicitors don't really know what they're doing when they're actually buying companies. They'll follow a standard format, but it isn't actually based on experience. It's based on buying bigger companies, which are easier to buy because, of course, everything's written down and there are good records, etc. So you do need to have that. That contract must protect you from everything, from previous tax. It's going to protect you from being sued. It's going to protect you from incidents that have happened beforehand. So that basically, if anything happens later on, the company isn't going to suffer once you've bought it. You've got to work out that basically there are going to be things in the background, or things in the near background, that mean the company may be subject to risk. And that risk, you've got to identify what that risk is, and then say, okay, right, we're going to nullify that because I'm going to put it in the contract. Contracts, for what they were, are not worth a lot of money unless you actually enact them, and then you may well enact them. And therefore, they will pay dividends to actually get the contract correctly done. recognizing that you've probably paid, if you put done what I did and bought a couple of companies, you've paid a lot of money. You want to get that money back if it all goes wrong, or you want to push on any debt that was left with the company which you were not aware of. So I bought one company and there was £17,000 of debt lying in the background that I never knew. The company had been typically run down by the owner, but thinking they could take out lots of money just before the sale, which is what they all do, and therefore you realise the company, oh, it's great. Look, there we are. There's money in the bank, and it's got. I can pay the staff, and I can pay the fuel bill, and then you realise there's a whole load of unpaid tax, and that really does grip you in the stomach. So that lawyer detail is really, really important, and the lawyer does need to be a specialist in buying companies. Your local solicitor will not be that, so don't go to them. I think obviously a decent laptop, Wi-Fi, reliable IT support, and they've got to be able to be called up when something goes wrong, which inevitably does, probably about 12 o'clock at night when you're doing your invoices. And you really do need to have fallback for that. So resilience for that is really important. We don't know a lot about accounts. We don't know a lot about VAT, payroll, etc., how much to pay people. You've got to have a good accountant you can talk with and who isn't too busy to deal with idiots like us who come out and really don't know much. And those accountants actually are very good at talking about the things you need to look at and look into as you buy the company. And they will start looking at or give you clues as to what to look at that basically makes you suspicious. And one of these things obviously is the cash, how much cash there is proportionately to the actual registered business, if you like. That last point there, preparedness to get your sleeves rolled up, sometimes literally. I worked on a flooded office until 6 o'clock in the morning overnight, and thank God I was used to being on ops and still quite fit, because otherwise I think I would have fallen over. And it was just me at the end of it. All the other cleaners fell over but me. And so that's literally what you have to do. And it depends on what your company is, but you may realise that you have to literally throw yourself at it 100% to make sure that the next day you can walk away, fall in bed for an hour, and then get up again and start all over again, because catastrophe does happen. Yeah.
So thanks, Simon. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask, do pop them over to us. But Simon, one of the things you've talked a lot about the financial side and setting up, buying a business and caveat emptor. What about the marketing and selling of your services or your products? That, without a client or without a customer, your business doesn't even get off the ground.
Yeah, this is why I thought about buying a business rather than actually trying to set one up myself. And the reason for that is if you have a customer base already, word of mouth is clearly the best. It's networking, and it's what you've been told probably as you're leaving the services. It's all about networking, talking to the right people, talking to as many people as you can. That mud against the wall principle. If you throw enough of it will stick. All these websites and everything, they're great. Obviously, you've got to have a website, but at the end of the day, and he says having ET Cleaning Services doesn't have one, but there you go. They don't do what you need to do, which is basically keep drip feeding you new customers. The best way is literally letter dropping. I found in doing my business, it's letter dropping to all the businesses in the area that you want to hit. A personalised little letter, which basically is on the old A6 or A5, little card like that, shoved through the door. Actually, you get loads of them. So what you do is you don't send them via the postman. You get a little boy from down the road, cheap labour, to go and do them. That is £5.67 or whatever it is. And literally, you go out, you drop him off. He then runs up and down the road, dropping all these things into the lucky slots you want. That has been the most successful in actually pulling customers in. If you deliver them with the post, lots of people, as we all know, just pick up all of this trash mail and put it straight into recycling or in the bin. But if you do it at the odd times, the letter drops and then it's just one off. And a lot of people do come along in my business and say, oh, I'm fed up with my cleaners. Oh, there you go, there's a new cleaning company, I'll give them a look. So in terms of marketing, that is most certainly my most effective way of doing it. Once I get through the door, my hit rate in converting a potential to customers is 98% at the moment. I say 98%, 98.4% to be exact. And I tend to run it like that. Time is on my side because people usually, if they're responding to your marketing. They're usually looking at changing anyway. Military people are generally good with other people, and so it's quite easy for us to connect with people as you're getting through the door. Yummy mummy housewives, really easy, and I'm not even handsome, so yeah, that generally works quite well. The HR people generally who you generally end up speaking to, because they end up being HR and stroke office managers. They love someone who comes in and says, okay, this is all rubbish, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to fix this problem for you, and it'll make it go away. And that brutal military response, funny enough, actually, it works for them. They go, thank you very much, I'm handing this over to you. And funny enough, the longest I've had to wait is 7 minutes before they've said, yes, thank you very much, can I sign you for the paper, please? Really? So, yeah, it's something we can do once we get in front of people. That salesman piece is quite easy because they just love efficient Nazis like us, basically.
Somebody sent in a question, and for some way or other, I managed to eliminate it. I apologise about that. I'll get that question up later on, and I'll chat to Simon about it and send you an answer by email. I apologise about that. I seem to have lost it. Simon, you mentioned briefly website a moment ago. So we listed a number of websites here which we thought might be useful to people starting out their own business. What do you think about these generally?
Yeah, generally, the business link, that gives general information. It takes you off down lots of rabbit holes, etc., and you can read up tons and tons of this stuff. But that is good, useful stuff. It also gives you links into a load of business groups around your area that it gradually, as you go down the rabbit holes, you can find those, and you can link in with lots of people and find out what people are talking about in your area, whether or not it's to do with offices or whether it's to do with locations to actually set up business, etc. The HMRC websites, they're very good, but reading them dry is quite difficult. You know, if you suddenly realise they're all self-employed. I mean, I remember when I was doing my exiting course that I didn't really have a lot of time for, but a guy was trying to work out there, he'd been in the military, I think, like me, forever, and he was trying to work, he just couldn't get the tax thing. And so trying to read it up it's quite dry, and you do need someone to explain it. So once you've had a good read, then that's the point to take to the accountants, etc., and have a good chat with them. Usually they give you your first hour for free, and so that's actually quite good. Prospects, don't know. To be honest, I never went into that one. Careers advice, yes, but with all of these careers advice and systems, careers advice, it's my problem was I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do, which was wear a suit and run around in a staff job forever. And so you have to really have a good idea what you want to do before you start going into careers advice. Is my advice there. Systems Advice Bureau, very good for telling you how to get small claims court directions, so that you can basically take that to court and get paid if people don't pay you. Usually, the moment you've put in a small claims court action, people pay you pretty immediately because they realise you're serious. And then setting up business, that's a good website. It tells you the types of things that you should do. What it doesn't do is tell you things that you mustn't do. As in, this is a bad idea, finding out about staff, etc. That's not great. It's all very PC as well. How else? Don't know. IODcom, don't know. And the ex-Forces, I thought they were quite good. Good chats with them. Officers Association, good for obviously getting some general advice and pointing you to people who can, and it's not on the list there, but pointing you to people who can actually help you, who, you know, people might advise stuff and say, look, whatever you do, don't do this. So pointing to people who say, look, he's got some experience of doing this. If you want to chat, go and have a chat with him. Personally, that's the best. All the others are rules and rule books, which you can pick up as you go along. But I think getting the idea about what you can do, what you want to do, and something what you don't want to do, and then all the nooks and crannies about what's good and what's bad. It's only with talking with people who've actually done it, failed, or failed and then succeeded. So yeah, I would say those.
Great, thank you, Sam. Ex-Forces, by the way, are co-located with the Officers Association here in Victoria, in London. And if you're thinking of setting up, are well worth having a chat with. Just for those of you attending, just to let you know, we have another webinar. Next webinar is on Tuesday, the 17th of April. It's the BNY Mellon Returning Military Programme and their Insight Day on the 3rd of May. And the BNY Mellon Programme is 24th of September to the 2nd of November. So that's a webinar, 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, the 17th. So Simon, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really, really interesting and quite entertaining as well. If any of you want to pose any questions to Simon, at the bottom of this final slide are his mobile and email address. So Simon, thank you very much indeed for having us.
Yeah, thank you much. Well, if anyone's wanting to give me a call or meet up or anything, always keen to do so and help out anyone who's thinking about doing this. There's a lot of, when you come out of the military anyway, we're institutionalized to a certain extent, and there's a lot of information out there that we need to get hold of in order that we can make a success of leaving the military. My best thing as when I was leaving was certainly to just talk to as many as people as possible about any job role, whether or not it was setting themselves up or indeed going into work for anyone else, and your mentality, your own personal personality and mentality will decide whether you want to do that. But certainly, yes, talk to as many people as possible. I'm always quite okay to be called day and night because I don't sleep, or contact me by email if you've got any specific thing, and we can arrange time to talk or meet up, etc.
And any questions that you posed that I inadvertently deleted, I apologize for that, we will address and send them by email to you. So thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Simon, and a very good night to you all.